It is 10 o'clock, and you are watching Act One, a Canadian take on news events. I am your host, Gordy Canuck, and with me, come here, come here. I have Max, the Wonder Dog. Come on up. I got a treat for you. Yeah, come say hi. Come get. You want? Come here, Max. We'll go there. I see I have one person watching right now. We'll see if more people join in. Say hi. This is Max, the Wonder Dog. With his four white paws. I can only really show you the ones on the front. And his white little mantle. The genuine mongrel hound who has gotten his treat. And he promptly dropped it. Max is worn out. He was playing tug of war. He was out for a walk. He was playing fetch. And just before the live stream started, he was laying down in his little doggy bed, out like a light. And then there was a noise coming from the backyard and he started barking. Anyway, sit, 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 sit. He's learned this. Sit, good. Shake the paw. Good. He's doing the paw. Lay down, lay down. He hasn't got lay down yet. He hasn't got it. At any rate, and our lone watcher, and there are two now, so hopefully some more people will join in. I'm going to talk about the news and events that have gone on the past week. But before I do, I had an idea. I thought I'd share a little experience from my own life, going back all the way to 1978. Hard to believe. It's coming up on 50 years ago. And it's an experience I had back when I was in grade 7. So we're talking 1978 here, the 70s, a different world. And I thought it might be some interesting content. Let me know what you think of this little vignette from my time when I was about 12 turning 13, I guess, 1978. Yeah, I would have been 12 turning 13 that year. And I was in grade 7. We had just moved back to Canada permanently. We'd spent 1 year living in Portland, Oregon. And we'd moved back to Canada. Whale oil beef is here from the West Coast. So we have Nancy from Montreal, and we have Whale Oil Beef, who is out in British Columbia. And of course, you have me, who's in Ontario. So we've got 3 provinces represented at this point. And Americans are welcome as well, or anywhere else in the world. But regardless, so grade 7. 1978. I just started at a new school called Frenchman's Bay Public School. And I'd already gone to Coleman, Pineland. This is my 4th school, 5 if you include kindergarten. And eh, I'm in grade 7, new kid, getting into fights because I don't talk right. I don't use the right words. I'm kind of an American in the eyes of a lot of people. And there was one teacher at the school who terrified us. His name was Mr. Grounstein, and he was a gorilla of a man. He's probably no bigger than I am right now, like kicking somewhere around 6 foot tall, probably, 200 plus 200-ish pounds. He had a Beatles haircut. He had sideburns. Again, it's the 1970s. And I swear to God, I swear to goodness, his knees or his hands reached below his knees. He was a gorilla. And he was British. I don't know where in Britain, but I would guess somewhere around London, maybe the East End. He was a rough character. And if you acted up in his class, back in the 70s, corporal punishment hadn't yet completely gone away. It was phasing out. But teachers who'd been around for 10 or more years, they had been brought up that corporal punishment was an accepted manner of discipline. And our science class was on the 2nd story of the school. There were windows overlooking the side of the school. And if you dared to go look out the window, Groner, as we called him, Mr. Gronstein, would come up and smack you on the backside. He would never do it to a girl. He was never physical with any of the girls, but with the boys, man, oh man. And he was also famous for picking you up by the shoulder with hands the size of basketballs, lifting you out of your desk and throwing you into the hall. So on one particular day, um, we had to show our science notebook. We had a week, every week, Mr. Gronstein wanted us combing through the paper, the newspaper, something from a bygone era, and we were to look for articles on anything that related to science. And then you were to cut the article out, paste it into your science notebook, and then you were to write 3 or 4 lines, a paragraph, giving a synopsis of the article to prove that you had read it. And then once a week, you would go up and down the rows and check to see that it was done. I did not have it done. The kid sitting behind me was Tim Shadoff. None of the names have been fictionalized. Heck, it's coming up on 50 years ago. So these are all the real names. Tim Shadoff was sitting behind me. And Mr. Gronstein was walking up toward my desk, and he stopped at Tim Shadoff's. And he said, Mr. Shadoff, can I see your science notebook? And I'm looking back over my shoulder because Tim, I figured, probably didn't have it done either. And as I looked back, Tim very sheepishly put his head down and said, well, I didn't get it done this week, sir, or something like that. And within a nanosecond, or what seemed like a nanosecond, that hand the size of a basketball grabbed Tim by the shoulder, lifted him out of his desk, took him to the door, and threw him into the hall. Now I'm next. Comes back into the classroom. He walks up to my desk and he says, Mr. Cozy, can I see your science notebook? And I looked up at him and I said, I didn't get it done this week, sir. And as I looked into his eyes, I swear I could hear grinding. I could hear metal gears clanking one on the other. And it seemed to go on for 30, 40. It seemed to go on for a long time, but it was probably no more than 5 or 10 seconds. And then finally, Mr. Gronstein said, you'll have it from me tomorrow. And I looked up at him and I said, yes, sir. And he moved past my desk to the one in front of me. And I was like, how did I avoid? How did I avoid? Why didn't he do it to me? I was maybe a little bigger than Shadoff, but not much. Then, sometime after that, there was a big guy named Greg McCoy, who should have maybe already been in grade 8 or 9. Wouldn't surprise me if he'd been held back. And he was a big kid. He was pretty damn near close to the size of Gronstein. And one day I was at my locker, and out of nowhere, blindsided, McCoy, this big ape of a kid, comes up and he body checks me, sends me flying, and all my books go scattering on the floor. And just as he did it, just as he body checked me, Gronstein witnessed it. He'd just come around the corner just in time to see it happening. And Mr. Gronstein walked up to Mr. McCoy and he said, Mr. McCoy, how would you look at if I slammed you into a looker? And Greg, being the tough guy, he goes, it wouldn't bother me none. And so, bam, Groner laid him out. And I remember Greg McCoy sitting on the ground he wasn't hurt, just a stunned look of disbelief on his face, like he couldn't believe it happened. And as I picked up my books, I'm like, what? Why does Groner like me? I was not a particularly good student. It wasn't like I was on a roll or anything. I was a C student, and so the year goes on, and we go to summer vacation, and when we came back to grade 8, word spread throughout the school very quickly that Mr. Gronstein had was gone, and the word was he had had a nervous breakdown. So we had a new science teacher who was not, it was a Mr. Reed, and he was nowhere near as terrifying as Mr. Gronstein. So we all kind of breathed a collective sigh of relief. Then, when I was in my last year of high school, so I left Frenchman's Bay in grade 8, went to Dumbarton High School. And when I was in my last year at Dumbarton High School, I bumped into the principal from my old public school, Mr. Ray Oliver. And Mr. Oliver mentioned to me, I told him that I'd just come back from a French immersion course. I spent 6 weeks in Shippagan, New Brunswick. 6 weeks of total French immersion, and my French was pretty good. And Mr. Oliver said, well, you should come back to Frenchman's Bay if you have a spare class. If you have some time, you can help out maybe we have a new French immersion program at the school, and maybe you could help out. And I liked the idea. I was trying to improve my French. So I went and I volunteered in Madame Saufeur's class, and I heard when I got there that Mr. Gronstein was back now. And I was like, oh, okay. Is he teaching grade 7, grade 8? No, he's teaching grade 2. And I thought, oh my goodness, he's going to eat those kids for lunch. He terrified us when we were, 12, 13-year-olds. He's going to, those poor kids. And then there was a recess, and I looked outside and I saw Mr. Gronstein rolling around on the ground, laughing with the grade 2 students, 7-year-olds. They were jumping on him, he was playing with them. And what's amazing is this is 5 years have gone by, roughly 5 years have gone by, and he looked younger. This new incarnation of him looked younger, even though it was 5 years later. And when I saw him, I went up and said, Mr. Gronstein. And he said, Mr. Jose, gave me a big handshake, said, call me Neil. All right, Neil, you can call me Gordon. And he went, how are you? And we were talking. And I said to him, I finally got the answer. I said, you liked me. And he goes, yes, I did. And I said, but I don't know why. It wasn't like I was a student. I wasn't very diligent in your class. Why did you like me? And he goes, do you remember that time I was checking science notebooks and I threw Shadoff out of the class? And I said, yes, I remember. You threw him out, but you didn't throw me out. I didn't have it done either. Why didn't I get thrown out? Why did you spare me? And Mr. Gronstein said, you looked me in the eye. Shadoff wouldn't even look at me. And I hearkened back to the lesson my mother and father had taught me from a very early age. And thank God for it. And it was, when you're talking to someone, always look them in the eye. This came to mind because I was talking to a woman and her son, who I think was about 7, 8 years old. And I told him that story. And I could share it on here because it kind of plays into what I wanted to talk about tonight, talking about the news of the day. And something interesting came along when I was at church this morning. Pastor from my church, and I noticed my computer. How am I lagging? Uh, am I lagging? Because I noticed there's buffering going on, and I'm going to try and solve it. I hope my story got out. Um, anyway, I'm just going to catch up on the message before I get going. The message is Whale is saying that Mr. Gronstein sounds like a bit of a Neanderthal, and that Yes, he was a gorilla. The guy was big, broad-shouldered, again, hands the size of basketballs. And back in that day, in the 1970s, corporal punishment was not out the window. We had another teacher, Mr. Hughes, Kevin Hughes, who would take the big ruler that you use to make lines on the board, and he would snap it down on your hand if you're acting up in his geography class. And even before that, when I lived in Burlington, I finished grade 4, did all of grade 5 in Burlington, Ontario, Pineland Public School. The principal there was Dr. Saul, and he gave out the strap still. Hold out your hand, whack. I never got it, but I did know kids who did, and I even heard the whack. Laura Sprague, a girl I went to school with in grade 4 or 5, was called down to the office. And man, it was a different world. Interestingly, when I was living in New Jersey, grades 1, 2, 3, and early part of grade 4, and then in Oregon in grade 6, I never saw any corporal punishment. But the class sizes in Canada were always much bigger. When I was in grade 1, 2, 3, 4 in New Jersey, the class size was 20 or so, maybe 22 students in a classroom. Then we moved to Canada to finish grade 4 and do all of grade 5. And now there were 40 kids in my class, both grade 4 and 5. Then we moved to Portland, Oregon, and the class size was back down to 20 or so. And then when we moved to Pickering in 1978, when I went into grade 7, we had 4 homerooms, 4 different classes. And there were 71, 72, 73, 74, and 81, 82, 83, 84. And the class sizes were 25 or so. But anyway, and Whale saying that the lagging just started. I think I've cured the problem. And I hope it didn't mess up too much my story. And then Nancy's writing about something. Yes, and the sound pops and crackles. Oh, great. Well, hopefully it's cured now. And then Max Power, who is something, the name of my dog now. And I've started calling her that, Maximum Power, for fun. And I've started calling him. I got to make sure I use the right pronouns. I've never had a boy dog before. Max is saying, "Good evening, Gordon, and everyone in the stream. Happy Sunday." And he's saying hi to Whale, to Eat Me, to Elite. Sharunian is here. There's Sharunian. And Sharunian's writing that, we made it through November. Hard to believe. We're into December. Christmas is right around the corner. Max is reminding everyone to hit the like button. I see I have 3 already, and we have even more people showing up. Great. I wanted to share with you the message that, a part of the message from today's sermon when I was at church. The pastor made mention of the fact that he does not watch the nightly news. Now, that's not to say he's ill-informed. I know that Ryan pays attention to what is happening in the world, but he said during his sermon, he said he never watches the nightly newscast. And then he asked, when is the last time you saw some good news being reported? And there was a chuckle that went up from the congregation, and and he made note of that. I noticed, the chuckle there, not much. And he said in his younger days, when he used to watch the news quite often, and I've noted this as well, that toward the end of the broadcast or the last story, they would give you kind of the human interest story, something heartwarming about a dog rescuing someone from a burning building, or a kid doing a fundraiser for the local hospital or something like that, something to build you up after so many of the news stories. There's an old saying in broadcast journalism: if it bleeds, it leads. You got to play the negative. It draws viewers. And he juxtaposed this message about how the news is all doom and gloom when today, Sunday, the 30th of November, this is the 4th Sunday before Christmas. This is called the first Sunday of Advent. and some churches celebrate Advent. And you have the Advent calendar, and you have three purple candles, dark purple. Then the Sunday before Christmas, the candle is a light pink. And then on Christmas Day, the candle in the center of the Advent candle is white. That is the Christ candle. And I hadn't thought of it in these terms, but Ryan explained that that's a representation of the fact that every day is getting shorter and shorter now until the 21st when we hit the solstice. There's less light every day. We have more, the night gets longer and longer right through December until the 21st. So those dark purple candles are a representation of darkness, the darkness of the world. But then uh, the Sunday before Christmas, it's pink. Light is coming into the world. And then on Christmas Day itself, the Christ candle, white, a representation of the fact that light has come into the world. And this was called Hope Sunday. There's hope, peace, joy, and love. I don't know the order, but I do know that this is the Sunday of hope. And the opposite of hope is, for most people, I think, would agree on the word despair. And when you turn on the nightly news and you see potential war coming in Venezuela, the Trump is talking like he's going to be sending boots onto the ground to confront the allegation is that there are drug cartels operating within Venezuela with kind of the government, government agencies, turning a blind eye to them. They've been shooting down what they allege to be our drug running boats, ships in the Caribbean Sea. We have a very tenuous peace agreement between or truce or between Israel and Hamas that could break down any minute. The war in Ukraine and Russia appears to show no sign. They're talking about peace, but who knows? There are Christians in Nigeria there's just bad news after bad news after bad news, and it can lead to despair. And the message today was Christians, we are to be the light of the world. We are to shine light into this dark, despairing world and to bring hope, the hope of Christ. And so while I'm talking about the news of the day, uh, I want the overriding message to be one of hope. And a reasonable person might ask, how can you find hope? How can you find hope? We've got a liberal government in Canada that's burying us in debt. They did this big dog and pony show about a pipeline that's never going to be built. They're never going to build a pipeline to get LNG, liquefied natural gas, and oil into Asian markets. Never going to happen. It's not a deal. It's a memorandum of understanding. If this gets done, and if this gets done, and if these groups agree, then maybe we'll reconsider allowing shipping to take the oil and LNG to foreign markets. There are so many conditions that I'm confident it's never going to be built. Now, am I going to despair over the fact that Carney's just playing politics? No, I'm not going to despair. Why? Because Christ. Simple as that. No matter what happens, on this earthly plane, with dark forces all around us, I know that I have a home. I know that Jesus Christ has gone ahead to prepare a place for me, and I can be joyful, happy, regardless. I can be aware of the news, but that will help me from letting it get me down. So let me read what's being written because the message board is being filled up. So we got a lot of greetings and Max saying, LOL, maximum power. Max doesn't cuddle. You strap him in and feel the G forces. That's a line from The Simpsons where Homer changed his name from Homer Simpson to Max Power. I got it off my hair dryer or a hair dryer, I think. Um, and then Wales writing that watching TV is a all caps low priority, although local news is sometimes legit. When they read, I talk often on this channel about the fact that the news is there to program you. It's there to indoctrinate you. It's there to tell you what to think, what to believe, and how to feel about things. And they can do it very subtly. And people are duped, fooled into thinking that they've been informed when in fact they've been propagandized to like Mark Carney, propagandized to view Pierre Polyev as a horrible person. And yeah, and it's propaganda. And being aware of it will help you see through it if you're aware of the fact that it is propaganda. They do not, journalistic ethics in this country are in the toilet. They don't exist anymore. They're there simply, they're carrying the ball for big industry groups like the pharmaceutical industry. They're there to sell their narrative so they can sell their products. They're there to push the carny liberals because the carny liberals promise to keep the gravy train flowing, $1 billion+ a year to the CBC, 300 to 400 million dollars a year doled out to the legacy media to keep them afloat because no one watches them anymore. And they're going to so they're going to pump up Carney. They're going to push down on someone like Pierre Polyev, and it's distressing, But what can you do? It's distressing, but you don't have to despair over it. What else is being written? Max says, good news that I recently read about was that everyone can join the bread class action suit to get at least $50. No receipt needed. CBC News even reported on it. It happened a few years ago. I can't remember how long ago that the major grocery retailers in Canada were found to have been colluding on bread prices. And I think at the time, everyone who signed on for that lawsuit, class action lawsuit, eventually everyone was sent a gift certificate for like 10 or $15. I got mine, and like a lot of people, I gave it to the food bank. I figured, you know, 10, $15, what's is, but you put, and a lot of people gave their 10, $15 little rebate. They gave you a little gift card for to be used at Loblaws, Sobeys. I don't know the name of all the grocery groups. I know there's Sobeys, Metro, Loblaws, and you could have used this gift card at any one of those stores. But I know that our food bank here in town was inundated with them, probably got a few $100s, maybe a grand or two. And they can do a lot more with that than, anyway, you get the point. Uh, but I didn't know that, Max, so thanks for sharing that. I'll look into it, and if they want to throw $50 at me, which I can pass along to the food bank, I'll gladly do that. And the only qualification, according to Max, is that you have to be a Canadian citizen and registered by December 12th. All right, thank you for sharing that. So I'm sure it's easily searchable online. If you have a link of any description, put in the comments below or in the live chat now, or both. That's great to hear. And this is what I love about the live chat. I love learning stuff. I do not profess, obviously. Anyone who thinks they know everything about anything is that's what the nightly news does. It tries to present a narrative as if they are all knowing, all seeing, all wise, and they're none of those things. They're simply carrying the ball for various groups who the vested interests is a popular way of putting it. Um, Wales asking bread as in what? That kind, as in bread. If you bought bread. Uh, and the basis for the compensation, well, let's see what Max answered. Google these words and you'll find the CBC article on it. CBC $50 class action lawsuit bread. The basis for compensation is that there was a bread cartel fixing prices to keep them artificially high. And this is the same reason we got the $10, $15 a few years back, is that it's contended that Sobeys, Metro, Loblaws, all the major grocery stores colluded to fix bread prices so that they would be artificially inflated. It's a cartel. It's the same. We have something of a legal cartel in Canada with the dairy industry. You have to be a member of the dairy cartel, and the dairy cartel fixes the price for milk and other dairy products. And if you want to, if you have 100 head of dairy cattle, dairy cows, and you want to produce milk, well, you're not allowed to sell that milk into the marketplace except through the dairy board, the marketing board. I prefer calling it a cartel because that's what the marketing board is. Interestingly enough, the the same situation used to exist out west with the wheat marketing boards. They used to have a cartel system, and Stephen Harper, back during his tenure as prime minister from roughly 2005 to 2015. I don't know exactly when he did it, but he ended the wheat cartel, got rid of it. No more wheat marketing boards. No more having one. Basically, what it would mean is that everyone producing wheat would have to sell it to the wheat marketing board, and they set the price, and then the anyone wanting to buy wheat would have to buy it from the wheat marketing board. You couldn't buy it directly from a farmer. And Harper got rid of that system. With dairy in Canada, though, we still have the dairy marketing board. And one thing I've heard is that the dairy lobby in Ottawa is perhaps, I believe I've read that it is the largest lobbying group in the country. Whereas in the US, it's the NRA, it's the arms industry, it's the pharmaceutical industry. They're the ones lobbying the financial institutions. In Canada, the largest lobbying group, and from what I've read, is the dairy industry. They do not want to lose their cartel. And it played out politically during and I can't remember what year, uh, Andrew Scheer, so it was right after 2015 when Harper resigned leadership of the Conservative Party after having lost the 2015 election to Justin Trudeau's Liberals. Harper resigned and a leadership race ensued. And the two main contenders were Andrew Scheer from Saskatchewan and Maxime Bernier from La Beauce, Quebec. And part of Maxime Bernier's platform, if elected leader, he said that an elected conservative government would eliminate the dairy marketing board the same way that Harper had eliminated the wheat marketing boards. Well, the dairy industry got all behind Andrew Scheer. They poured all their resources into ensuring that he was elected leader and not Maxime Bernier. And then in the following election in 2019, Maxime Bernier, who was still the seated member for La Beauce riding in Quebec, which is south of Quebec City, heading toward the main border, Saint Georges de la Beauce, he was running for re-election, and the dairy industry poured huge money. They wanted Maxime Bernier and his new party, the People's Party of Canada, they did not want him maintaining his seat. Andrew Scheer went and campaigned in the riding and sat at a bar drinking a big pint of milk. And he, Andrew Scheer sold out to the dairy lobby. There are stories, and I haven't confirmed these anywhere, but I have no problem believing them, is that what happens is to maintain their control, that thousands of liters of milk get dumped, because if they were allowed onto the market, it would affect pricing. They want to control the supply. It's the same thing that happened during the energy embargo in the early 1970s, which mostly affected the US, didn't touch Canada as much. But OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Producing Countries, they controlled the supply and they shut off the tap. They just stored up their oil and they only let a little bit come through to force world prices up. And that's the way a cartel works. You want to sell dairy in Canada? Well, you're not allowed to sell it to the store directly. You have to go through us, then we sell it to them. It's it is far from a capitalistic system. It's more communistic, it's more socialistic in orientation, far more. And yet the Conservative Party of Canada endorses it. And why do they endorse it? Because I'm here to say that it's because the dairy industry, the dairy marketing board, greases them, and the Liberals and the NDP. They're going to make sure that they maintain their, I think the word is hegemony, their total control over the dairy industry in Canada. Anyway, uh, and Wales saying that he usually buys day-old bread for half price, freezer time. It's the one thing nowadays, so people who are shopping at the grocery store, the bread you don't have to buy day old. They stick so many additives, preservatives into bread and other products now to improve their shelf life. And a lot of people go to Europe where they still use fresh ingredients and they can't believe that they have stomach issues that disappear because they're eating healthier in Europe, where people in Europe tend to have more, go to the shops every day, buy your food that day for the shops. Um, and Max is writing that he thinks that Canada is very vulnerable to this kind of corruption. There's a revolving door between Liberal MPs who end up working at Rogers and other telecommunications companies, regulatory capture. There's a lot of this revolving door attitude between industry and government, where individuals go from being in the regulatory bodies, government agencies that regulate an industry, and then they move back to the industry that was being regulated. And you don't bite the hand that feeds you. Um, that's huge in the pharmaceutical industry. Look into the biographies of individuals who work for Health Canada, and you will see that a number of them came from where? They came from the pharmaceutical industry, and to Max Power's point about a revolving door, but then they go back. So they're going from the industry into the regulatory body, back to the industry, back to the regulatory body. And how do you it's the old analogy of the fox watching the hen house. Well, I'm a regulator now, but I want to go back and work in the industry. So am I going to bite the hand that is going to be feeding me in the future? Absolutely not. You can Google a great article that's from ages ago, um, back probably in around 2007 or 8, and it has to do with this this revolving door nature. This is on the PubMed site, which is a branch of the National Institutes of Health from well before the COVID era, when people still had a modicum of trust. And what you can just Google Pfizer repeat offender. Pfizer, and back in 2000, after 2005, I forget exactly what year, but it was after 2005. They were charged with bribing physicians, false advertising claims, fraudulent marketing practices. They were fined billions of dollars ultimately, and there were some voices in Washington saying that Pfizer should be shut down. It's a criminal organization, but ultimately the thought was, yeah, but if we shut down Pfizer, what's that going to do to the drug supply? You know, people who have medications that they genuinely need. And if Pfizer gets shut down, their medications are going to disappear. So ultimately, they were handed it was over $1 billion in fines. And I wonder to what degree industries like companies like Pfizer just write that off as, cost of doing business. Oh, well, we got caught this time. Oh, well, and that was over Bextra, BXTRA, which was an anti-inflammatory drug approved as safe and effective in 2000, and it was on the market for 5 years until the deaths and the instances of heart damage just kept piling higher and higher. And then finally in 2005, it was removed from the market, and it led to charges being laid against Pfizer again, bribing physicians, withholding negative data from trials. They would do a trial and then someone would die and they'd remove them. Well, they're not part of the trial anymore. Huh? But this is the world that we live in. And, getting back to my message that I heard in church today, I'm not going to despair over it. This is a dark world. There are a lot of negative things happening. I'll get on to some of them. Uh, and Whale is saying that I'd have guessed that Big Pharma was the king of lobbying. I think they're top three in the United States, but in Canada, our regulatory body, which is Health Canada, tends to just move in lockstep with whatever the Americans do. Approved in the States, approved in Canada. A lot of people tend to think of it as a rubber stamp. Take that for what it's worth. But that's the way I tend to view it. I mean, why lobby Canada? If we can get the Americans to approve it, Health Canada will go lockstep. And so many of the Health Canada regulatory officials come from the pharmaceutical industry anyway. They've already got their fifth column. They already have their Trojan horse in place. And then getting back to the bread question, Wales writing that the best bread that he's had was in Montreal when I bought bagels. You got to have a Montreal bagel. Something there makes it favorably different compared to here. It's a coin flip for me between Montreal bagels and New York, New Jersey bagels. When I was growing up in New Jersey, when I was like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I played hockey in New Jersey. And I'm going to give a plug. I'm not being paid. This is just my own life experience. Back in the early 70s, when I was playing hockey down in Westwood, New Jersey, just down from the ice, it was the Hans Dietl figure skating palace where I played hockey. It was the only pad of ice within an hour of where we lived. Right outside, just down the road from the Ice Palace, was Goldberg's world famous bagel factory. And Sunday mornings, I think I played my hockey started at like 6 o'clock in the morning. And that was because that was the only time the Hockey Association could get the ice. They didn't get the prime time. That went to the figure skaters. I mean, it was funny playing hockey in New Jersey in the 70s on a figure skating rink with no blue and red lines, no boards. It was made for figure skating, not for ice hockey. But you would come out and the smell of the bagels would be wafting down the street, and everyone, when they left hockey, went in and crowded into Goldberg's world famous bagel factory, and I was last there in the summer of 2019, so 6 years ago, and it's still there, different locations, still Goldberg's world famous bagel factory, but they have a much bigger location now. And that's in North Jersey, if you want to look up where Westwood, New Jersey is. Anyway, and then Nancy had written the largest dairy, getting back to the dairy, the largest dairy mafia is in Quebec. Hell, the same type of mafia even infiltrated the maple syrup industry. Would not surprise. There's huge money. I mean, we all buy milk, pretty much everyone. Although years ago, I found out I was watching Anthony Robbins, Unleash the Lion Within. And during one of his presentations, he made note of the fact, and I had never thought of this before, but human beings, we are the only mammalian species that drinks milk after we've been weaned from mother's milk, and we're the only animal that drinks the milk from another animal. Only one. And Anthony Robbins, in his little presentation, was suggesting that it was perhaps not healthy. I don't know. I'll tell you this much, though. I love milk and I love my dairy products. I like cheese. So even if it was determined to be unhealthy, I would have a hard time giving up milk. Milk, when you're hungry, is almost like a meal. Yeah, I'm one of those guys who drinks it out of the jug sometimes, just especially when you're hungry. It fills you up, even though it's um, even though it's liquid. Uh, Max is agreeing that something is very horrific. Huge number of people are now addicted to opiates because they listened to their doctors who were told that painkillers were non-addictive. Now you get to OxyContin and Purdue Pharma and how the marketing practices they engaged in and the fines that company was forced to pay. Now, Purdue, that's the name of the pharmaceutical company based out of Connecticut. And I wish I could remember the name of the individual who was I believe, chief executive officer, top dog. He was a Canadian. Uh, and then he left Purdue and he joined the medical marijuana industry. And, you know, it, follow the money, always follow the money. But that's difficult to do. That requires time to investigate things. I think most Canadians, well, maybe not, but millions of Canadians sit down, watch the news, watch CBC, CTV Global, they watch the news, and they're fooled into thinking that they've been informed. CBC never states its biases up front. They never tell you how much money they get in advertising from the pharmaceutical companies that they're reporting on. They don't tell you. They never disclose the fact that when commenting on government policy, that CBC is beholden to the federal government of Canada and, to the tune of 1 point something billion a year without funding from taxpayers, without government handing us that money, we couldn't operate. So, and Pierre Poilievre is advocating for defunding to take away that funding. So you should be aware of that when you listen to our coverage on Pierre Poilievre. Are we going to show him in the best light? I doubt it. It's not in your best interest to. But the millions of Canadians who sit down every night to watch the 6:30 news whenever it's on, they're not checking out my channel or any channel like mine. They're apt to gaslight anyone who was to say, well, I was listening to the internet and there's this guy who was on YouTube and there's this guy, Gordy Canuck. I don't know who he is, but he was saying that the dairy industry is a cartel, that there's a marketing board. And he sounds like, you're listening to the internet, are you? Going on YouTube. I listen to the news. I'm informed. Yeah, I was watching the news. They ran a great ad about the Ontario Dairy Association and how good the marketing boards are. And then they did a report on how good the marketing boards are. I'm informed. I mean, you can't, this world is so messed up. Uh, and then Max is saying that, how many people have put blind faith, blind trust into an industry group like the medical industry and have suffered negative outcomes as a result. Trying to word things carefully. Well, Max is writing, every Jewish bakery I've been to has been amazing, really delicious bagels and pastries. Uh, every Sunday morning, my dad would get 6 sesame seed bagels from Goldberg's, and then he would get one sliced with butter. And we would take the 6, and the one that was outside the bag, that was for he and I to share on the way home. He got half, I get half. And you talk about being childhood memories. I was probably in kindergarten, grade 1, and I noticed that my dad would only eat the one bagel. He would have half. We would share one on the way. We'd go home, family of 5, and the others would be devoured quickly. And my dad would never eat another one. He only ate that half. And I asked him, "Don't you like the bagels?" And he said, "They're fantastic." And I said, "Why don't you have more than one? We bring 6 home. There are 5 of us. Why don't you have another one?" And he said, "Well, they stick to my ribs." And he said, "What, you go out playing hockey every week and you're skating and getting body checked and they fall off your ribs, but they stick to my ribs." And with my 5, 6, 7-year-old understanding of anatomy, I had this mental image of little bits of chewed up bagel sticking to my father's rib cage. Anyway, uh, and then Max is going on to say, quote, "Look to the black and white cookie, Elaine. Look to the cookie." That sounds like a Seinfeld reference, and I don't know about it. Uh, and Max is saying, government is only motivated to follow the money when it's regular people donating to the trucker convoy. Then they'll freeze your account for having the wrong beliefs. I had a thought about that earlier, about uh, the manner in which people are programmed, but it's escaped me now. And the trucker convoy came into it, and oh yes, guilt by association. And I wanted to get on to this because of what happened in the United States with an Afghan, I guess you would call him a refugee. And I'm going to go a little off brand. I'm consider myself very much a conservative minded Canadian. Uh, However, it should be noted that in my younger days, I would have probably, everyone would have said a liberal, that I was a liberal. I feel like I've stayed where I am. Like, I don't think I've moved politically. My ideology, my mindset has changed that much. But the culture has shifted so much under my feet that I've been pushed onto the right, because the left, the liberal side, has gone batshit crazy. Pardon the profanity. The left doesn't thinks that a man should be allowed into a woman or a girl's locker room and should be allowed to compete in competitive, seriously competitive sports like the Olympics. That men should be able to compete against women. And I don't, everyone knows I don't go in for all the trans nonsense and wide open borders, let everyone in, come on. How about some common sense? Now, in the case of the Afghan refugee, the individual who allegedly, although, you know, I think most people have already convicted him, uh, is an Afghan national who was given refugee status in the United States. And from the reporting that I'm reading, he was part of an elite Afghan task force that were basically like commandos. They would go in, and because they're Afghan nationals, speak the language, they could be almost like a guerrilla force within Afghanistan, and that they were allied and helping the Americans. And it was because of that that when the war ended and the US withdrew, these guys would have been public enemy number one, because the US never eliminated the Taliban. The Taliban lived to fight another day. And these individuals would have been seen as foreign collaborators and they would have been dead. So the US allowed these individuals, and I think it's 1,000 plus, to come in to the United States and vetted them uh, once to come into the country, vetted them again when they sought asylum status, political asylum, because their life would be in danger because they were known to be, collaborating with what to the Taliban were the enemy. And now this one individual, apparently, from what I have been able to glean, this individual was denied a work permit, denied permanent resident status. He was kind of in limbo. And you're dealing with an individual who's like a Navy SEAL, like a US Army Ranger, you know, commando task force, the type of experience that these individuals have, whether they're Afghan, American, Canadian, British, doesn't matter, can quite often lead to PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, shell shock, operational exhaustion, uh, battle fatigue. All these different terms have been applied to this mental condition that soldiers have always experienced. And could that have been a contributing factor to this individual killing, assuming he's guilty? I don't know. It's alleged at this point. Assuming he's guilty, could his mental state as a result of his wartime experience in Afghanistan played a part? I don't know. It needs to be adjudicated. He's going to be tried for murder. Fair enough. All this will come out. But in the wake of it, what has happened is that President Trump, who some things I like, some things I don't, has put a blanket moratorium on, he wants everyone who's come into the United States from Afghanistan deported. Get them all out of here, which to a degree that there's an appeal to that because people are angry, they're disgusted, they're, at what this individual did. And having been in the military, I'm very familiar with something referred to as group punishment. One guy in the platoon gets up late and the whole platoon has to run 10 kilometers. You're all guilty. One Afghan national commits a heinous act, and now we're getting rid of them all. Same idea. And it's the same idea with what happened in Ottawa during the trucker convoy, when some people would watch the news and see someone with a racist symbol or a Confederate flag or something and go, all off the street. That's what those trucker convoy supporters are all like. They're all a bunch of Nazis. They're all a bunch of this. They're all a bunch of that. And I want to caution anyone watching my channel about succumbing to that kind of, I'll call it groupthink, to use an Orwellian term. I loved what Pierre Poilievre said when he was interviewed about the trucker convoy and about individuals having been seen with Confederate flags and other symbols that are typically associated with hate groups. And he said that individual should be taken to task, but you don't malign an entire population of people based on one or two or three individuals. You go after that individual. So this individual who is alleged to have committed this act, if he is tried and if he is convicted and if he is found guilty, then he should pay the consequence. But are you going to? And I was not aware of the fact. I knew that the US and Canada likewise had allowed refugees from Afghanistan who had helped out the military forces in and around Kandahar, in the southern portion of Afghanistan where the theater of war was. We brought them in. The Americans brought them in. But I'm only just reading now that these Afghan fighters who were fighting as allies of the American forces have been left in legal limbo with no legal right to work. And how that kind of existence being, you know, am I an American? Am I not an American? Am I going to get kicked out? Am I not going to? How that plays onto an individual who could very well be suffering from PTSD from having been a commando, engaging in raids. Don't lose our humanity. You know, that's my ultimate message. Uh, and I'm just catching up on the message. And then Wales citing Mark Twain's famous quote about the newspapers, about the media. I think, yeah, when he said in the context, probably written or spoken sometime in the 1850s, 60s, Mark Twain famously is quoted as having said, if you do not read the newspaper, you're not informed. And if you do read the newspaper, then you're misinformed, or words very close to that effect. Denzel Washington, the actor, reiterated the same basic saying on the red carpet during it. He said, if you don't watch the nightly news, he said, either watch the nightly news or pay attention to the media. Then if you don't pay attention, you're not informed. And if you do pay attention, you're misinformed. And you're not really misinformed. You've been programmed. You've been told. You've been told what to think, what to believe, and you've been instructed, programmed, algorithmed into how to feel about things. And the algorithm knows how to play you, it knows how to play me, it knows how to play all of us. And it's worthwhile to disengage periodically and to reset yourself. And the best place to reset yourself, I will tell you, is get into this book. You forget the WEF's Great Reset. There is a Great Reset coming, but it's not the reset the WEF has planned. It's the reset that is coming when the King of Kings and Lord of Lords comes back, returns, because the light never goes out. It can get dim. It can get dark. It can be despair. You watch the nightly news. It's easy to look at what happened with the pipeline. If you're, I think, if you're reasonably intelligent, you can look at the memorandum of understanding and recognize that no pipeline is ever going to be built. The hurdles that need to be surmounted in order to build that pipeline are insurmountable. It'll never happen. But this, by signing the memorandum of understanding, Carney can now say, see, I'm in favor of pipelines, but I'm making sure that there are conditions that can never be met. So that way I'm also against pipelines because I require these unmeetable conditions. So if you're in favor of pipeline and allowing Alberta to unlock probably hundreds of billions of dollars in wealth to enrich Canada, it's not going to happen. There's that side. So that you could succumb to despair. But on the flip side, if you're one of the environmental types who is all in on climate change and, oh my God, we got to get off of oil and gas and here, and they're going to get their heads are exploding. Stephen Guilbeault, former environment minister under Justin Trudeau, has now quit cabinet in protest over this memorandum of understanding. If Stephen Guilbeault had any brains, he'd recognize that this is just that Mark Carney is simply playing optics. He wants to appear like he's got to bring in enough conservative minded Canadians if he wants to win a majority at some point. And it was only because he had the softball liberal media pumping him up that he was able to win the last election. Anyway, Whale goes on. Okay, Whale just reiterated. And then Max Power is quoting something that is attributed, but I believe falsely, to Winston Churchill. Still a great line, but there's no record of Winston Churchill ever having said this or written it. But people have shared, you'll find it on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, picture of Winston Churchill and a quote very similar to this that Max writes: "If you're not a liberal when you're 25, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative, by the time you're 35, you have no brain." I've usually heard it as 20/40. If you're not a liberal at 20, you have no heart. And if you're not a conservative by 40, you have no brain. I think that happens to a lot of people. There's an evolution, there's a recognition, there's life experience that comes, and you start to recognize that something I love saying, it's a great line, that that perfection is the enemy of the good. And what? Perfection's the enemy of the good? How's that? Well, it's because things will never be perfect in this world. There will always be problems. I hearken back always to the Bible, to the gospel, good news. And Jesus was at table when Mary came and anointed his feet with an incredibly expensive nard, N-A-R-D, a balm. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it cost a lot of money, probably cost like a year's wages. And she poured it out on Jesus's feet, anointing them with this oil, this ointment, this nard. And there was at the table, they were aghast. Oh my gosh, look at all the money think of what could have been done with the money this nard cost. We could have fed so many of the poor. And Jesus did not admonish her. He said, "She has done a beautiful thing for me. She has anointed my body for burial. The poor you will always have with you. The poor you will always have with you. You will not always have me." And think about that in terms of this saying that perfection is the enemy of the good. Perfect would be there are no poor in the world. There is no poverty in the world. It's never going to happen. But because of that, something that is being done that is good, anointing Jesus's body for burial, tongues cluck. Oh, I'm a much better person than you. I wouldn't have wasted money on nard. I would have gone and given the money to the poor, but they're still going to be there. There's something, it's built into the fabric of reality. And it is that there's something called Pareto distributions. It's the 80/20 or 70/30 rule. Some people say 80/20, some say 70/30, where 70% of the outcome comes from 30% of the workforce. Is basically how it boils down. 80/20, 70/30, somewhere around there. The actual formula is that within any large organization, I think it's 80% of the output comes from the square root of the total number of people. So if you have a workforce of 100 people producing widgets, fictional, if you have 100 people producing widgets, 10 of them are producing 80% of the widgets. That's the way it breaks down. It's the square root. And it was discovered by an Italian mathematician named Pareto, who noticed that in his garden, the peas being produced, I've talked about it before, that 80% of the peas were coming from just 20% of the pods. And he tried to weed out or cull out or, only take peas from the productive, he got rid of the non-productive pods, but the same ratio played out. 80% came from 20%. And it strikes me that it is built, it's built into the fabric of creation. And some might ask, why? Why aren't things perfect? Why aren't things ideal? Well, if everything was perfect and ideal, then might as well just go to sleep. There's nothing to achieve. Everything is perfect. God looks after everything. I tend to think there's imperfection in this world, that things are not perfect because God loves us and he wants our lives to have meaning and purpose. And I'm convinced that once I get to the other side of the veil, once I shed this mortal coil, I'll have a better understanding. I don't think I'll ever have a full understanding, but I hope to have a better understanding. Reminding me of a song by John Mellencamp. Maybe they'll have a better understanding. Check it out. It's the name of the song. Check it out. Let's see what's being written, and we'll wrap up tonight's live stream. I've hardly talked about the news much. I talked about the Afghan national who's alleged to have killed one National Guardsman or guards person, because it's a woman, and another critically wounded. There's that story. Any other news that you guys want to talk about? Any other big events happening in the world? Um, And Max is saying that he too was a liberal in his youth, but I also think liberals were more sensible back then. And that's, you and I sound well met. I feel like the ground has shifted under my feet, that I haven't changed. I do know I have gotten more conservative in orientation, but I think it's more a case of the ground has shifted under my feet and I'm standing close to where I was before. But now on the political spectrum, society wide, I'm on the right. Whatever. Whatever. Back in my younger days, I wasn't following a Christian path though. Uh, and then we have Max throwing out a scripture quote from the Gospel according to John, chapter 15, verses 18 to 19. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I've chosen you out of the world. That's what Jesus is saying, I believe, to his disciples. And anyone who, that should be our goal, to be disciples of Christ, to be light in the darkness. Is a dark world. People don't know boys from girls. They're scared, they're worried. Remember Jesus's admonition about, consider the birds, consider the lilies. Look at, look at the flowers in the field. Even Solomon was not arrayed so beautifully. And if God so looks after the flowers of the field, will he not also look after you? But there's a challenge there because it requires a lot of humility and to losing yourself in Christ. And if I'm being honest, I know I've got further to go. Uh, I'm writing something up on this now. This is what I think holds Jordan Peterson back from making a public profession that I am a Christian. I think his definition of what it means to be a Christian is more, goes further than most. And he was doing a podcast interview 2021, 2020. It was just, he'd been very sick and he was just getting back into being a public figure. And Jonathan Pajot had him on for an interview. And Jordan Peterson was talking about the fact that uh, there's a narrative world and the objective world. There's the world of stories and then the real world. And so the narrative and the objective world. And he said, and the point at which they meet where the narrative world and the objective world meet, is Christ. And he said, I find that oddly, he said, I find that oddly plausible, believable. I can put my hands on this, but he says, I don't know what to make of it. And I'm afraid to think of what would happen if you went all in. I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said, I'm terrified to think of what might happen if I went all in, or if someone was to go all in. And I think with Jordan Peterson, he's built. I think of the rich young man, rich young ruler. There are a couple iterations, and different gospel writers have a different way of presenting the story of the rich young man who comes to Jesus and says, "What do I need to do to earn eternal life?" And to this individual, Jesus says, "Sell everything you have and follow me." And the man went away sad because he was very wealthy. But wealth doesn't just have to be monetary. Jordan Peterson is highly regarded. He has a massive following. He's a very intelligent man, incredibly intelligent. He's got an IQ, it's got to be 150. Yeah. If he's not genius level, he's close. And to give all, to walk away from that and put it all, give Jesus the wheel totally, has got to be incredibly difficult for someone with that intellectual capacity. And I would love to see Peterson proclaim himself to be a Christian and then to define what that means for him. Because one of the rationale he gives for not professing himself a Christian is he said, because it means different things to different people, and that when people ask him, "Are you a Christian?" they're simply saying, "Are you a Christian the same way that I am a Christian? Are you part of my camp?" And that's a distressing part of the division that happens within the body of Christ. Oh, I'm Seventh-day Adventist. I'm Roman Catholic. I'm Methodist. I'm Amish. I'm this. I'm that. When we're all to have unity in Christ. Uh, Nancy's writing that Zelensky, second in command, his immediate right hand man, just decided to quit. The small green troll days are numbered. I wouldn't count on it. I wouldn't count on it. I think that war is going to go on. I think we're being given false hope about and it's happened before. I think we're in a false hope period with respect to the war going on between Israel and Hamas. I think there's a false hope being sold there. Uh, I think we're heading toward more conflict, not less, but it's not going to be a straight line up. There are going to be periods of regression. I've sometimes equated it to, when you're a kid with a sibling and you dunk them and then you let them come up and gasp for air and then put them back down again. And I think, we're going to see little periods of calm hope that, okay, maybe this war is going to end, and then more and more and more. And that's why more and more we need to keep our eye on the prize. We need to keep our eye on the cross. We need to lay it all down and find that peace, joy, and comfort that comes from knowing that Jesus went ahead of us and that he's prepared a place for us. Anyway, um, he seems to think that the war between Russia and Ukraine, that it's almost over. I'm not counting on it. I'm not, because if anything, I think, it might expand into Poland. It could expand into the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, the three Baltic republics, which are now part of NATO. But who knows? Who knows? NATO is showing signs of fracture. So we shall see. And Max is saying the dunking continues. And that happens. But anyway, I've been going on for an hour and 20 minutes on this. We're still the 30th. We got another 41 minutes by my count. It's 11:19. So basically 40 minutes and some odd seconds, and we will be into December. And now's a great time to go out to church. Find a church. They'll welcome you and check it out. Here's some good news. Are they preaching out of this book? Are they reading out of this book, out of the Holy Bible, NIV, Good News Bible, English Standard Revised, King James, whatever translation it happens to be, whatever Bible you're reading, that's the one. Wales writing that 10 years back, Ukrainian war ideology initially seemed to be about the capture of undersea pyramids, aka seaports, but that quickly was sidetracked. I seem to recall a little bit about that. There's a lot of underground stuff off the coast of India, off the coast of Crimea. We'll find out. I mean, it's interesting that Crimea, which was annexed without a war by Russia, that when it was the old Soviet USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the old USSR, in the days of the old Russian Empire, Crimea was part of Russia. Then, during the Soviet era, the Crimean Peninsula was given to the Socialist Republic of Ukraine for administrative purposes. A lot of the people living in Crimea are and were and are ethnic Russians. So complicated, this world. We were reading today in church from Isaiah about where it says how the lion will lay down with the lamb. And Ryan, the pastor, was talking about the fact that, we tend to think of that, you can look at that on the literal plane, okay, a lion and a lamb laying down together. But so often, especially in the ancient world, but even now, animals can be representations for nations. We still call Russia the bear. And Americans sometimes, venerate the eagle. And then, what do we have in Canada? We got the beaver, whatever. But, in the ancient world, Greece was represented by a leopard. Sometimes animals can be a representation of nations. And the lion laying down with the lamb, the bear lying down with, the Russian bear, peace. Peace will come. Peace will come. And that is where we can draw our hope from on this first Sunday in Advent, which is called, which is named Hope, Sunday of Hope. And one of the Sundays is also peace and joy and love. I just don't know the order. Anyway, God bless. Thank you for watching. This has been Act One, a Canadian take on news events. We did touch on some of the news, a little bit anyway. My next live stream is scheduled for Wednesday. That's when I plan to do my next one. And that'll be a faith-based message. And I haven't decided what yet. And it'll be based on a specific passage from scripture. Something will come to me. But in the interim, I will invite you to accept this blessing from the book of Numbers, chapter 6, toward the end, a bit of a modified version of the blessing that Aaron gave to God's covenant chosen people. And the blessing is this: may the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. And may the Lord God Almighty, creator of all things, may he grant you peace. And as I always like to say, that peace is there. It can be found. Get into relationship with the Son, with Jesus, who bore your penalty, my penalty, the sin of the world, took it on that cross. And you can watch the nightly news and not fall into despair if you do watch the nightly news, or however you get your news, whether it be from Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you get your news. There's a lot of despair out there. There's a lot of people wanting to misery loves company. Misery. I want everyone fighting. I feel like fighting everyone. I want everyone fighting. You're a Roman Catholic. You're not a Christian. You're not Roman Catholic. You're not a Christian. You're not in the wrong church. What unifies us? So, and is Whale is Danny, who didn't show up tonight, but always puts up the message Jesus is King. Um, Whale has put Jesus is coming, the crown, and then look busy. The busyness we need to be engaged in is spreading God's word. Hard to do in this world, hard to do, but we can. And I invite you to do it. I invite you to get into a relationship, and I invite you to invite that Holy Spirit in and um, then share, because there are a lot of people who are looking for answers right now, and you'll find a lot of them. I'm not going to say all. You can find a lot. The most important answers are here. God bless, and we'll see y'all. I'll probably be uploading content between now and Wednesday, but Wednesday night live stream around 10 p.m. Uh, and Max is quoting from John again. My peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. That's John, Gospel according to John, chapter 14, verse 27. That's the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Great way to end. If you made it all the way here and you're not subscribed, you're welcome to hit that button. And thank you for the likes. And you can fill the comment field down below. What did you think of my Mr. Gronstein story? Uh, it was an interesting time, the 1970s. Anyway, God bless. We'll see you all again soon, hopefully. Bye now.